If you've seen any of my recent videos, you'll know my thoughts on Dandy's World are less than amicable. Unfortunately, because of being in similar territory, them being in the same genre, Toons Universe falls into many of the pitfalls that Dandy's World does, and it can make for a pretty rough experience. Fortunately, unlike Dandy's World, the devs of this game are very open to criticism, and have been changing the game around feedback. This is my first impression of the game with about 6-ish hours of gameplay, so my opinions are by no means final, and once I'm further along, this video will 100% have a sequel. Before we begin, please subscribe, as my goal is to hit 10k before September 30th, my second channel anniversary. With that out of the way, let's begin. Before getting into the more rough parts, I want to start with what I do like about the game, beginning with by far the most outstanding part of the game, the aesthetics. This game has an excellent and very cohesive style, with super expressive animations and some great toon designs. And while the Infected don't go for anything too horror-ish, I still enjoy their designs, especially Infected Discard. The half-skull exposed look is super cool and it's just a great design. Along with designs and animations, the game has voice acting, which, to my surprise, was actually pretty good. The environmental design is also very cohesive and pretty nice. Maybe too cohesive, to the point that it's genuinely hard to find machines. That's like the one critique I have with it aesthetically. That and honestly most of the Infected designs are just meh, or I'd say about half of them are good. The visuals here are far and away the best part of the game, but it doesn't mean the gameplay is bad. It's still quite a bit better than Dandy's World in my opinion. This is where things get a bit more critical. The game, similar to Dandy's World, is based around the completion of machines to clear a floor. There are a few major ways in which the game differentiates itself though. First, after completion of the base machines, there's a main machine you must finish with a couple different outlets, usually like 2 to 4. Second, the amount of machines actually changes depending on your player count. And third, there are 2 different machine types, but not in the way you think. They have different stats. One of them takes the hacking stat and the other takes the extracting stat, adding a bit more stat distribution overall. I'm not particularly a huge fan of this, but I don't absolutely hate it. It just seems pretty unnecessary and adds some strange stat bloat. The machines themselves now have a good, great, and perfect ranking for skill check timing, which I really like. The bar also changes its speed every check to add a bit of difficulty, which is 100% just super interesting, making for far more variance in the skill checks of the game. I can't say this is perfect. I mean, for the most part, these are still lifted from Dandy's World, and the skill checks there are pretty stale, but the small variations actually add up quite a bit to make the game generally better. I still do have a few gripes with how machines work in this game, though, primarily just how hard they are to find. They're pretty small and blend into the environment easily, so you can spend an extra like 4 minutes per floor just finding them, which can be very frustrating, especially when you've got to do the main machines directly after spending so much time just trying to find the normal ones, which definitely contributes to the less than optimal pacing of this game. The main machine does get highlighted when it's open, and is huge, so I think that does help a bit. The machines themselves are just pretty unoriginal, like I said. There are little tweaks, and those are definitely helpful to differentiate itself, but I'd like to see more differences in different type of machines overall, which honestly I think they'll do knowing how much they listen to us. Along with machines, this game, like every other Delver-like, has its form of Twisteds, the Infected. Surprisingly, despite not every existing toon having an Infected yet, the currently existing ones are pretty mechanically interesting and make for a fun threat to deal with, especially with distracting for the most part not being involved. You of course predominantly have your usual chasing you Infected, but surprisingly even these have somewhat interesting mechanics. Infected Discard occasionally echolocates, Weffel can be temporarily distracted by putting waffles in her cart, and Tapo has a trail that gives you a slowness effect. Aside from that, you've got the more unique Infecteds like Guido and Rossum, who will hide in holes in the roof and attack you, Celine, who has a Weeping Angel mechanic, and Squiddle, who's got the tentacles that come from the ground, similar to Blot or Sprout from Dandy's World. These Infecteds already show a pretty good grasp of what the devs want to do with this game, and give me a lot of hope for the roster to keep being super interesting, and not end up with the same pitfalls that Dandy's World has. This doesn't mean that I think all of these mechanics are amazing, far from it. GNR have an issue where it feels extremely unfair for you to get hit by them sometimes because you have no indication if they're on the floor, forcing you to check the roof each time a floor begins, which can get tedious. Along with that, Twisted Squiddle's got a major issue where he straight up creates a tentacle under you and instantly hits you, making him impossible to dodge. His hitbox also just feels pretty inconsistent. While the Infecteds have issues, I find them to still be interesting threats, especially since distracting as a mechanic is heavily discouraged in gameplay, though unfortunately it is technically possible. There is one major issue with Infecteds though, and this isn't really them, but specifically the map design. Because of how so many of them are laid out, it can be a pain with how much you get spotted. This is only exacerbated when it comes to main machines, since you will almost always lead the Infecteds to the machine by accident, or they'll just pass by and see you. Overall, my biggest gripe with this game really is floor pacing, as spending a ton of time on one floor isn't particularly fun nor rewarding. Despite that fact, meta progression isn't actually that bad. It's pretty bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not Dandy's World bad. The main currency, Malachor, is awarded when you complete machines, floors, and pick up capsules. Unlike Dandy's World, there are tons of capsules, since there isn't research, which means that the capsules are an entirely different way to obtain Malachor. This is only further improved when you find out that there are 2 different upgrade cards that up your Malachor count per capsule and per item done, or objective, like any type of machine. Still not a fan of upgrade cards as a concept, super kinda just meh for roguelikes, but at least they essentially replace Roger, because I hate Roger. If you saw like one of my second to last video, you'll know how much I hate Roger. Now that you understand how the currency works, I can explain how you get emblems, which are this game's trinkets. Like I said previously, no research, which is amazing. If you saw that video, you'll know how much I despise that mechanic, because it is a mess. Though, in all honesty, I'm not sure this system is a whole lot better, at least in execution. In Toons Universe, you'll gradually level up. Once you hit level 100, you get an emblem. Unfortunately, if you remember my previous statement, floors take forever, and on average, you'll only get about 1 level per floor, meaning a solid 100 floors to max out a character. Now, like I said, I don't think this system is conceptually bad, it's just the level cap being at 100. Knowing the amount of complaints they've got about this though, I expect them to soon lower the cap to something like 50 or 75, and make 100 a skin, similar to the vintages from Dandy's World, though probably a better skin. There's also a mechanic specifically to discourage distracting, and that's sanity. This mechanic is a bar that goes down while you're being chased, and honestly, I'm not a huge fan. The Infecteds are already fast enough to get you either way, so it feels kinda pointless, and a bit frustrating when you die from being chased too long, since it entirely removes your stamina if you get your sanity lowered. It's just kind of a meh mechanic overall. The final thing I want to address is character kits. As of recording this, I spent almost all my time using Nimbus, as well as a match or two as Weffel. I've quite enjoyed Nimbus's kit, and from the little I've played of others, I do think these characters do pretty well at differentiating themselves playstyle wise. Now, like I said, I mostly use Nimbus, so he's the character I know about the best, and I think he has a super interesting and simple kit. His passive allows him to speed up while stamina is less than 30%, and his active makes him sleep for 5 seconds, but allows a full restoration of your stamina bar. This is a pretty simple evasive extractor, but I think he's balanced quite well and feels interesting enough to use. He's at least a more interesting starter than anything from the other popular Delver likes. Weffel's pretty cool too, with her ability allowing her to give speed boost waffles, but I haven't quite used her enough to have a full verdict. From what I've read of other Toons descriptions though, surprisingly, everybody seems pretty decently balanced. Well, everybody's usable except for one, and that's Fantasia. She just really stands out as having quite a bad ability. It gives a random buff or heal to a teammate, and that's pretty much just Gordy again. Not a fan of random abilities of this manner in any roguelikes, but especially in Delver-likes, and it's always been a big plague, so I hope she gets reworked. She's not really bad per se, I would say the balancing is pretty good, she's just not a well-designed character. Overall, for my final verdict, while I do enjoy this game, it's got some major design flaws, mostly because it's similar to Dandy's World, coming from the slow and repetitive nature of the gameplay. I have quite a bit more faith in this game specifically though because of how much they've done in just this week and a half of post-release content. GNR got nerfed for being too OP, they saw feedback that he's now too weak, and already fixed him and made him fair, but not too OP, in the span of like 3 days, along with fixing other issues and changing some stuff up, and I believe they're going to change the machines, because they've talked about that before. I definitely have gripes with the game like I previously stated, but I'm very hopeful for the future. I can fully understand why a lot of people would dislike it coming from Dandy's World since it shares so many flaws, but I'm confident the devs will fix them over time. I likely didn't cover everything in this game, but I will be making another review in the future once I've got my bearings on it a bit more, as this is mostly my first impressions. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and join my Discord.